Well, the United Nations Children Agency, UNICEF, is measuring child food poverty. That's an estimate of how nutritious and how diverse a child's food should be. It measures 3 categories. 5 or more food groups is above the threshold, but if a child is only eating from 4 food groups or fewer, they are living in moderate food poverty. And if they only have access to 2 food groups or fewer, that's severe food poverty. UNICEF is saying that 1 in 4 of the world's children under the age of 5 are living in severe food poverty. Half of the world's children are experiencing food poverty overall. A report says household income is not the only factor that leads to severe food poverty. Children from so-called non-poor households can be affected as well. Alexandra, Rutishauser-Perera is head of Nutrition Action Against Hunger UK. She joins us from Cadiz in Spain. Can I ask you about the geographic concentration of this report, about the whereabouts, which sort of population are you most concerned about?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the report has data that comes from 130 countries. So it's a report that has been done with extensive data, and we have to commend UNICEF on the quality of the data they use for the report. But obviously, the data are more reporting on the region of Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, which are the most affected regions of the world with child food poverty. So the Africa region in general, Latin America, Asia are the most. They are also the data from which we have the countries from which we have more data. Unfortunately, very often we lack a lot of data on child nutrition, child nutritional status in Europe or United States.
Why is that?
Simply because there are less civil society being involved in collecting those data. Those countries are also less affected by conflict or humanitarian situation. Therefore, there's not a regular collection of those data.
Tell me, in terms of it, so it seems as though, from this report, millions of families are struggling to provide nutritious and diverse foods for their children. You mentioned that there is a difference in the data you've collected from Europe and North America compared to Sub-Saharan Africa and those countries. What is the main cause of this? I know it's a very broad report, but is it conflict? Is it the climate crisis? Is it growing inequities? Rising food prices? What would you say are the main factors driving child food poverty?
You've pretty much named them all. So there is indeed. So there are global factors. The crisis in Ukraine, as well as we know, has driven the prices of the food, of main staple food up as well. That has been a factor. We are still facing the consequences of the COVID-19 epidemic as well, on how it has affected health systems as well in countries where there was already a fragile health system. And then climate shocks, conflicts that also impairs parents to have access to the right food they need for their children are very important factors that drive food poverty in children.
And of course, there is always concern about the physical effects of this on the body of a child. But how does it affect cognitive, brain development, ability to learn?
Yeah, exactly. So those children, and the report mentioned that there is definitely a link between child food poverty and malnutrition, and that the countries that are most affected by what we call chronic malnutrition or stunting are definitely more affected by severe food poverty in children. And what it does is, indeed, children are not growing up to their food potential, not only physically, but in terms of cognitive ability. So they are not not doing as well as they should at school, which means that later on in life, they won't have access to the same opportunities as a child who have the appropriate food in their youth. And this has, of course, then economic consequences for governments. And it's a type of vicious circle where if governments don't invest into their nutrition services, they will never have the budget that they need to take care of the population the way they require.
Thank you very much, Alexandra Rutishauser-Perera. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.